Certainly, I think it would be. I think that was the idea of
Yeah.
the legislation. I think the pause is very important for a lot of reasons, namely that, anywhere in the country where the $15 minimum wage has been put into place has generally been cities, Seattle, Los Angeles. Those economies certainly are very different than the economy of Utica or Rome or Syracuse or Buffalo or Niagara Falls for that matter. So I think there was from the very beginning a very real concern about what going to 15 without any sort of way to say, wait a second, 5-6 years from now, where is the economy of New York? Have we made the changes when long-term unemployment? Have businesses left? Have we increased unemployment because people have lost their jobs? In other words, you might have more people making more money, but you may have less people working. That's always certainly a concern for me. I guess the last question I'll ask on the minimum wage, and my last question to wrap up. There's also the under the statute the ability to suspend completely the increases. In your opinion, what do you think? What factors or general economic conditions would you look at that would warrant a suspension in the minimum wage?
That's a pretty complicated question, again, because I haven't really dug into exactly how we're going to do this. I have a general idea.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, if there's some horrendous upheaval, that would have a huge impact. But, I was thinking when you were talking, it's interesting. 5 years ago, would we have thought that the economy in New York State would be as robust as it is today? I mean, in 2007 and 2008, did we have any idea that by 2016 we'd be in the kind of shape we're in? So there are so many factors, frankly, outside of New York as well as within New York State that we're going to have to consider. But I think that's going to be a very thoughtful, certainly from my perspective, it's going to be a very thoughtful process that's going to take place in the moment, not from, it would be wrong of me to have an opinion now that I would never change because
of course
everything else is going to change. My opinion better be ready to change too. But it's going to be complicated, and I welcome the work. I think it's going to be a great couple of years to really look and see how these things impact the various economies around the state.
Well, and certainly your opinion can change, obviously, or the factors that go into it. I think one of the things I'm looking at is, hopefully we're taking into account certain factors. When you talk about the robust growth in the economy, certainly nationally, but I think from a statewide perspective. But one of the things we see all the time, and I see certainly, is that when you break out the growth statewide, it is still heavier and much more robust downstate, where they've actually, I think, either reached or exceeded levels before the recession.
Yeah.
In upstate, not
difficult.
There's certainly been some positive in my area, the Buffalo area. There's certainly been some positive signs and some growth and some exciting new projects. But I think we're still far away, where I am, from being able to say we have this robust economy, and there's still a lot of nervousness as it surrounds these things. So hopefully we look at factors like new jobs, wages, consumer price index, consumer confidence, all those kinds of things would be weighed in. And I look forward to being a part of that conversation and discussion. But I appreciate you coming here today and answering the questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Ort. Senator Gallivan.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
And I thought you'd be interested to know that I've worked to support and do my part to help grow your former industry in Western New York through an enhanced film tax credit.
Excellent.
And
Congratulations.
I don't know if you know the film commissioner out there, but he's done an outstanding job. And we've actually seen the growth in Western New York as a result of that credit that I know
You've had some big films out there, I believe. Weren't some of the hero films done in Western New York, or Batman?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the forum to be talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and others.
They're always good for the economy. People love them.
But nonetheless, welcome. A couple comments, if I may, and then I wanted to ask you about one particular area. First, you had talked about treating the businesses as customers, which is very, very welcome to hear. Quite often, my office gets, and I'm sure all of the members of the Senate, they get calls from legitimate businesses who want to succeed, and they raise questions like, why is New York an impediment? Why don't they help us? We see the tax department catching us, the labor department catching us, things of that nature. So I do think that it's very important to have the attitude about trying to help our businesses, being mindful, of course, that they're required to follow the law. So I hope, I welcome that and hope it works its way down through everybody in the Labor Department as we move forward. You spoke about investigations, and I think you said something to the effect about, part of the role is assisting mistaken employees and punishing bad actors. I think any of us would answer the same. If I asked the question, how do you ensure a fair investigation? I would just simply ask that you work to ensure fair investigations. Not all employers are the same. My experience with the constituents I've dealt with, and for a period of time I chaired the Small Business and Economic Development Committee, is that the overwhelming majority want to succeed and are trying to do the right thing. And they've run into some impediments, in some cases very heavy fines, and in some cases I think being treated unfairly by the investigators who aren't open, or who haven't, in the few instances I've seen, haven't been open to the explanations. So I just ask that you keep that in mind. If they're bad actors, they're bad actors. We have laws in place that need to be followed, but I think all of us share. We want to help our businesses and our constituents succeed. Which leads to the workforce development. All these jobs that are out there, another common thing that many of us hear, we can't find employees. We can't find people who want to work in this area, or they don't have the skills. And you've traveled the state, it's incredibly diverse, but not all of the state is Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, Yonkers, New York City. And you talked just a little bit about providing a lot of these services in cities and just outside of cities. And I would just simply ask that you look beyond our footprint of the thruway in the big cities. There are many rural areas of the state, and quite often, in my view, they're left out when we're looking to do things like workforce development, urban youth programs, things of that nature, and they face many of the same challenges, just don't have the same amount of population. My district, I do not have any city, but I have both suburban and very rural areas. Wyoming County, with only 40,000 people, 46,000 cows is one of them, number one dairy output in the state, yet they are only 30 miles in either direction from the city of Buffalo or city of Rochester. And quite often it's difficult to drag state services and resources down there. So those are my comments. I just ask you to be mindful of. What I had wanted to ask about was payroll cards. Several years ago, I had gotten involved with putting forward legislation to permit a payroll card as an authorized form of compensation for employees. We were in New York under the law. You could do check or direct deposit, or cash direct deposit. Check. Employees have to opt into certain things, and certainly that was the proposal with payroll cards. We worked very hard. We worked with organized labor. We worked with employers. We worked with financial institutions, and even the Attorney General's office to put forward multiple drafts of legislation that ultimately we thought was fair to everybody. Last year, in May, the Department of Labor came out with some proposed payroll card regulations that raised a lot of concerns. I weighed in on some of those concerns, as did many people. Since then, there was revised regulations that have come out, different comment periods, and I suspect others provided some comments, haven't got much feedback. So question is, a couple parts of the question. When will we see the regulations coming out, and how can we ensure that they are fair to everybody? Certainly, we want to be fair to employees and make sure there's protections in place. At the same time, we want to be fair to employers, so it's not an undue burden on them, and a whole separate industry, the financial institutions. So I haven't seen the latest. I'm curious when they're coming out, and how do we, and again, how do we ensure that they're fair to everybody so that this is something that employees can take advantage of, and the payroll card industry doesn't pack up and leave.
Right. It's a great question. And I know those regulations have been in process for quite a while. They are close. I don't know what the exact date is. As to the fairness, I believe that's why we have the comment periods attached, so that everybody has an opportunity. Once we put it out, we get the comments. I think, I'm not positive about this, but I think when the comments come in, if we change, and it opens up another comment period because you've changed something, and that's been part of the rolling problem because we're actually adjusting because of the comments we've gotten, but that extends the period. I think we're close to the end of that. I don't think it's, I know it's not tomorrow, but I know it's soon. And I understand the concern, both from a worker's perspective and from an employer's perspective. One of the things that I did when I was president of my union, my industry went through an enormous transformation from film stock to digital production. And it happened really in less than 10 years, and it was a tsunami of change. And it was all technology. And we had to learn, we had to scramble to be ahead of what was happening, and it happened, like that. It's a very important lesson that we live in a technological age that demands change, and we need to be able to adapt as those changes come. Otherwise, we're going to be in the museum with a buggy whip. And I think we're doing our level best to do that. But frankly, our democratic process also actually elongates the period because we do want to hear what people have to say. We do know that it's going to impact them, and we don't want to hurt anybody. But it does make the process a little more cumbersome. But we are very aware of it, and we are certainly on top of it.
And if I may, I'm very comfortable if that's the reason that it takes a longer period of time, so long as the comments are looked at and properly evaluated. So again, there's a semblance of fairness for everybody involved.
Right.
Thank
I hear you.
Thank you, Senator Siddiq.
Thank you, Senator Martins. Welcome, Commissioner. I'm going to
Thank you.
take the opportunity to address you as Commissioner because I have no doubt that by the end of today that is in fact going to be your official title. And I also want to thank you for what you've been doing up until now. You have been everywhere. I can say I've seen you in all parts of the city. I've come across you in many events. You've played a very active role engaging with communities, either in labor events or even just community events. So your presence is certainly appreciated. Your experience, both on both sides of the labor table, I think is so critically important. Your experience both as a labor negotiator, and you bring to this understanding of the future of the workforce. So I'm really excited about your commissionership. Not that I've had any problems with your predecessors, but you bring something different to this job, Commissioner. I always feel somehow or other that I should apologize to whoever sits in your chair or runs the Department of Labor because of the workload that I have placed upon your department. In the 11 and a half years I've been in the Senate, I have put upon your workforce the Wage Theft Prevention Act, which you yourself talked about earlier in the past year, or this quarter. We're recovering $10 million from 17 million workers, 31.5 million last year. That's just a drop in the bucket of the number of claims that are out there. And that's actually just the claims that your department captures. A lot of the work is being done, fortunately, by the Attorney General's office. I see Jim Rogers is here. Also by local district attorneys, largely because I believe you don't have sufficient staff in the Department of Labor to handle the work that I alone have imposed upon you. But that's a budget discussion for next year. I've written the Wage Theft Prevention Act. Misclassification in the construction industry, a big problem. We know misclass has done more to depress wages for working people than just about anything else. Misclass in the trucking industry, which is now the law of the state and is being implemented. The Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, which is probably correcting, an historic injustice. With respect to the question that Senator Ort asked you about the farm workers, it's interesting. I worked on that bill. Many of us in the Senate have worked on a version of the Farm Workers Bill of Rights. We have never achieved a Farm Workers Bill of Rights here in the state of New York, but we were the first state in the country to correct the historic injustice done to domestic workers by the passage of the National Labor Relations Act. And when we did that, the first thing we had to do is we had to change the definition of what an employee is in New York State. So What may be informative both to you and to others here, and I'll offer an opinion on what I think about the lawsuit and what I think is going to happen. It's going to wind its way through the courts, and it's going to wind up back at the legislature with a ruling by the Court of Appeals that says that because the New York State Constitution does not acknowledge farm workers as employees, they are not entitled to any of those protections, any more than domestic workers were, or independent contractors, or taxi drivers, all of the other workers. As you know, this Constitution doesn't really define who an employee is, but it does say who employees aren't. And those protections that are the subject of that lawsuit are afforded to employees under the law. There is, however, a version of a Farm Workers' Bill of Rights that I put forward 2 years ago that gets at what I believe is the heart of the challenges that farm workers face, but doesn't present the terrors that the farming industry would face. And I would hope that after your confirmation, you would take a look at it, and perhaps we could work together with the Commissioner of Agriculture and the Farm Bureau to address some of them. It doesn't include things like collective bargaining, not because I don't think farm workers should have that right, but because I in a more pragmatic way, realize that this is a transient workforce that is not here long enough and less likely to want to pay dues to someone if they're not going to be around to be organized. It also takes into consideration that farmers perhaps should not be required to pay unemployment insurance on workers who aren't here and don't work enough quarters to ever collect on it. So it's a more pragmatic approach about solving problems for farm workers to give them some dignity and some profound change in their day-to-day work life, but also doesn't impose an industrial model that may or may not work on this industry, and I look forward to talking to you further about it. And maybe we can get justice for farm workers in this state in our lifetime. But I also think that going forward, one of the things that I hope that you will look at, because you're very innovative, is the changing world of work. As I said, we're not going to be the old model where people work for the same employer for 30 years and they work a 40-hour work week. That's just not the world of the future. So even in our unionized workforce, we're looking at a different model, and how do we adapt to that? How do we create that new workforce, which is in many ways is freelancers, and freelancers are particularly in the media field, are victimized on a regular basis. They're not covered by the Wage Theft Prevention Act, but they are as victimized as low-level restaurant workers. So we need to address that issue. There are challenges in our workers' compensation system. 8 years ago, we passed workers' comp reform after 12 years of negotiation. It was supposed to decrease costs for employers. It was supposed to increase access to injured workers. It was supposed to improve payments to doctors. It's done none of those things. It may have done something for the insurance industry, but it hasn't helped workers in the slightest. It really hasn't helped businesses. We need to work together, and I know workers' comp is not necessarily all in your wheelhouse, but it's partly in your wheelhouse. Worker safety, critically important. Yesterday, the Brooklyn DA indicted a contractor on a construction site, on our small construction site, the non-union construction sites where they're hiring day laborers. Every day, workers are injured. The ones who die make the newspapers. The ones who don't wind up in an emergency room, maimed for life, with no way to be compensated. No one protects them. And worst of all, those contractors continue to operate with impunity. You can almost guarantee they will not be held accountable. So there is a lot that may not necessarily be totally your responsibility, but you will have some insight and oversight over. And I certainly look forward to working with you on those issues going forward. And I'm just very happy to have your partnership with the Department of Labor.
Thank you. I look forward to those conversations.
Less a question, more of just a comment. Yes, I signed it already.
No, I know you did, just to the point you made earlier, Commissioner. Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I'll follow suit, Commissioner. My colleague, Senator Savina, raised some very interesting points. I'm interested in her view on the farm bill and other bills. let me take you to where I want to go for a moment. I have just three questions for you, and then I'll stop. Used to be a time that the Empire State that we are in was known for having the largest unionized workforce in the nation. We were very proud of this. Now, I understand there's choice, and I understand that there must be. How do we ensure an even playing field for any workers who do want to unionize?
You mean how do unions organize workers?
Oh, no. How does the Department of Labor ensure an even playing field?
I'm not sure I quite understand your question. So there are laws for how unions organize workers.
Sure.
And those are enforced. Help me, I'm missing
Okay.
something here.
I'll bring it to you at another day. I'll take you to workforce development instead.
Okay.
Your strike force idea is a very interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more proactive way of going about things, and I like it. But we're not really reaching the discouraged workers. How do we go about getting the discouraged workers who are not necessarily going to walk into the office? How do we get them re-engaged?
That's an excellent question, and that's something that we struggle with. It's interesting because as unemployment has fallen, the people who are left are often the people that you speak of, the worker who has not been able, they've been chronically underemployed or unemployed, and they've dropped out of the system, and it's hard to find them. One thing we're doing in Buffalo in the strike force is we're working with the community. There's a coalition of ministers there that we've worked very closely with. We also work with other community programs in Buffalo. And frankly, one of the things that they are going to have to do to help us is they're going to have to bring some of their people to us so that we can work with them. Because often, you're right, these are workers who don't come to a DOL career center because they don't think they've got a chance. So we are reaching out to our community partners as well. But the other thing we're doing is we're outstationing our career counselors in the community to places where some of these people will feel more comfortable. Perhaps it's a church. Perhaps it's a meeting hall that members of the community are comfortable going to. It's not as intimidating. And that way we can reach into that community. I think sometimes people don't understand that if you come into a DOL career center, you're worked with as an individual. You're not a statistic. You're not a class of people. You're not a group of people who are unemployed. You're an individual. If I came in and I was Roberta Reardon and I was chronically out of work, the first thing they would do is sit me down and talk to me about what's my experience been, what kind of jobs have I had, what kind of training have I had, what are my concerns, what are the things I think I could do right away, or are there jobs that I need some training for, and how can I be connected to perhaps a not-for-profit that's doing that kind of training. A lot of it is helping people feel that they have hope, that they can succeed, that they are not kicked to the wayside in this society. But we do work individually with people, and we do depend on our community partners, particularly in those areas where we have a large number of people who have barriers to employment. It may be education, it may be having a criminal record, it may simply have had too many failures early in life and they just don't think they can succeed. And those are special cases, and those are places where we really do need the help of the community. We can't do it by ourselves, but we are there and ready to work with whoever we can get to. And so one of the things we're doing in Buffalo is we're talking to those community advocates and saying, where can we find those people? How can we work with them, help them come to us? Because we have some solutions. We don't have all the answers. I wish we did, but we don't. We have a lot of the questions. But it is a deep problem of, we all know, if you fail at something and then you fail at it again, you begin to think of yourself as that failure. And turning that around is a very difficult thing to do. But we are there to be partners. We are there to offer you our resources. And we would welcome the input from community people, which we've gotten a lot of in Western New York and in the Bronx.
I will follow up with you on that also. You're amassing a lot of demography on different communities.
Mm-hmm.
how do I tap into that? How do I get some of this good stuff that you guys are doing on my community so that I can understand it better and be more useful to my constituents?
I think we should have a conversation off mic about how to do that. I don't know the ABCs of it, but some of it's doable. Some of it, I mean, some of the stuff that we collect is privileged information because it comes from UI, from unemployment, and that is, you know, that's very carefully guarded because that's a person's individual work history, and so we're not going to be sharing that with anybody. But the larger statistics, I'm sure there are ways that we can manage to help you with your questions, and you know, I am frankly amazed at the statisticians that we have at the department. They are amazing. They do great work, and they seem to never sleep. So we have a lot of numbers available.
My last question, Mr. Chair, is Hurricane Sandy. What initiatives have your organization done, and what are you contemplating to make sure that those communities get on their feet?
That is, of course, a long and difficult process. Hurricane Sandy was really had massive impact up and down, you know, the East Coast, not just New York City. And so there have been layers. The emergency response, the DOL participated, as I understand, because I certainly wasn't here when it happened. And frankly, I was stranded in Los Angeles on a hotel when it actually happened. I couldn't get back for a week. But you know, we did a lot of emergency response. I know that we had to change some of the unemployment requirements for people who were washed literally out of their homes. So we've done a lot of work with that. The recovery now is at a different place. And I would have to get some statistics for you because I'm not sure exactly what we're doing now in light of the remnants. It's sad that so many people still are out of their homes. When I was up in upstate, we went to Schoharie Valley to visit Commissioner Ball's house and farm, and then we drove through Schoharie because I did not realize that Irene had such an impact in that area. And I was shocked to see how far away from the river those people were with, I guess it was 18 feet of water. It was amazing. And there are people there who are still struggling. It's a very difficult problem. Sadly, I think we're going to see more storms like that because of climate change, but hopefully we'll be more prepared each time it happens.
Well, I look forward to meeting with you on some future date, but voting for you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. A couple of quick points, topics that we've discussed in the past, but I think it's important that we sort of hit them here as well. Prevailing wage, enforcement, concerns we have, and we've heard from so many of our labor leaders that, you know, although many jobs have prevailing wage components and require certified payroll, that the ability of the department to respond to complaints unfortunately takes time, and oftentimes the job is completed. If it's not a state contractor, they're back to wherever they came from, and the ability to then track that down, and the contract's been paid. And so where there would have been abuses and where there were abuses, and we know there were abuses, unfortunately the system was too slow to respond to those abuses. How do we address those concerns? How do we expedite enforcement? How do we ensure that when, you know, we do have prevailing wage components on our jobs, where there is a prevailing wage component, there are taxpayer monies associated with it? How do we protect the taxpayer money and the public policy behind it in those instances?
That's a great question. You and I spoke about this the other day for quite some time, and it was a great conversation. Obviously, we cannot visit every work site. That would be impossible. I got the number of public works in the state, and I've forgotten it, but it's enormous. We do have excellent inspectors. I am very impressed, frankly, with the professionalism of the inspectors for the DOL. We have the second highest number of inspectors in the country, and they work very hard to make sure that these laws are enforced, but it does take some time. If there are innovative ways, you suggested a way to me the other day, and I'd like to continue to have that conversation. If there are ways we can expedite the work, we would certainly do it, but we all understand the last thing we want to do is go into a construction site and essentially shut it down on a theory that they're doing something wrong, only to discover a bit later that they're actually doing it correctly, because then we've impeded business. And, we have this duality that we juggle all the time. We want to protect the good players and we want to protect the workers, but we also want to make sure that it's not a disincentive for businesses to work in New York State. And it's tricky.
I understand all enforcement is tricky because, there are always going to be the possibility that the person is found not to have committed the acts for which the enforcement action was started.
Yeah.
That's always part of this. And so I would just hope and encourage that the department be more proactive in terms of responding before as opposed to after. And if that means at some point, I guarantee you that when a job is stopped, you will get every answer you want, you will get every document you need, and you will get every level of cooperation as a result, which you may not get after the job is completed.
I hear you.
And so let's work to ensure that public work with prevailing wage components continue to be public work with prevailing wage components, so we do not have people cheating the system and, frankly, cheating the taxpayers of this state and the commitment that they've made to labor. Another question that I have has to do with the new overtime rules that have come down. That have come down from the federal government. Obviously, it's a wide-ranging change. It affects every sector in New York State and every corner of the state. What steps, if any, is the department considering? And how do you see assisting small businesses in general, but small businesses in particular, as they grapple with implementation of these new regulations?
Right. So this is a federal rule, so we are going to, we make sure that those federal rules are followed. That's part of what we do. One of the things that we do with businesses, and we're going to do it also with minimum wage, we do it with a lot of regulations. We go to we put a great deal of effort into making sure that businesses, particularly small businesses, because large corporations often take care of this in-house. It's their business and they take care of it. Smaller businesses are more stretched for resources and it's more difficult. We make sure that we work with the businesses. Of course, we have all kinds of signage and we go in and do visits and explain the rulings. We have seminars that we hold and then we post them on the website so that that's available for people to go back and see. We're certainly available for anyone to call us if they have a question. We are there to answer the questions. What we want more than anything else is for our businesses to thrive. And the federal regulations are the federal regulations. So we're going to help businesses understand what they are, how they, when they take effect, who they cover, because most of the businesses in this state want to follow the rules. They're not looking to get around. They're not looking to get a leg up. They just simply want to open their business every day, run a good business, be a good community citizen, and go home to their families at night. And we want to assist them in doing that.
No, I appreciate that. I have one last question, and that's under the workers' comp law, and again, not to put you on the spot, but if you happen to know, there's a requirement that the Department of Labor specifically prepare a report regarding efforts to minimize the number of claimants who have not returned to gainful employment or have been reclassified from permanent partial disability to total disability. And so it's I guess, a metric to figure out whether or not more and more of our workers are getting more and more hurt.
Seriously
and how many
injured,
of them are returning to work. And there's a report that the DOL is supposed to prepare, and that's supposed to give us, I guess, an insight as to whether or not we need to change our approach to workers' compensation as well, and whether or not we should be changing policies through your department and through workers' comp to address these concerns, because obviously the whole point of workers' comp is to get people back to work.
Right.
You familiar with the requirement?
I know about the requirement. That's about all I know at this point. I can get more information for you.
We'll follow up. And
Okay.
again, it's another metric. And to the point that Senator Sanders was making earlier, if there is a way, and I know there is, because as you mentioned, the statisticians you have working for the
Great.
Department of Labor are brilliant.
Yeah.
And so, since they are that brilliant, I'm sure they would be able to break out those statistics, say by Senate district, and be able to then provide them to members. And we don't need private information from unemployment insurance. What we do need are statistics in our districts and those metrics. How many people are unemployed? How many people are working? How many jobs are available that are not being filled? In what sectors are those jobs available that are not being filled? And so we can help you in discussions with our local community colleges and have those discussions as to why they are not providing the certificate programs or the accreditation programs that are necessary in order to put people to work. And so, there is a relationship here that I would like to encourage. And certainly, part of that relationship has to deal with data. And I think we would all agree that collecting data for the sake of collecting data really does no one any good.
Thank you.
And so I thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. If no one else has any questions, I'll entertain a motion to move the nomination. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
The committee has voted unanimously to advance your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you.